that's where she'd be. And I thought maybe I'd try to go find her. I know thee by the trenchant gleaming radiant from thy battle sword. I know thee from that eye whose gleaming rules the earth as victor, Lord. Sprung from heroes' bones that scattered, hallow every Grecian vale, with thy pristine soul unshattered, spirit of freedom. Hail, all hail. Buried in them thou didst languish, lost in shame and woe and fear, waiting till to end thine anguish, come to me, should greet thine ear. But that hour came slowly, slowly. Near thee silence reigned alone. Terror shadowed all things holy. Round all slavery's chains were thrown. Hapless thou, all gladness vanished, but one cheer thy fancies keep. To recall thy glories vanished, tell thy tale of eld and weep.
This is my third time creating a project in Greece. I am so drawn to working in this country. I've had such wonderful experiences, and this is my second time working with the Philippi Festival. I came in 2017. Theodoros Gonas invited me to be a part of the inaugural Ancient Drama Workshop, where I had the pleasure of developing an original play based on Prometheus Bound and Suppliant Women, focusing on the character of Io and her epic journey from a young girl to the founder of a nation.
Then thine eyes were raised, dim, blotted with the tears of sorrow's store, and on my garment folds were clotted, trickling blood with Grecian gore, stained with crimson, spite of danger, all unknown in unknown lands. Thou didst go to sue the stranger for the help of his strong hands. alone thou wentest, and with mortal anguish camest back alone. Never easily the portal opens to once plaintive tones.
I had, in 2019, Mr. Gones had come back to the United States, bringing a project that Ioli Andreadi had created, and I invited him to speak at our college, Brooklyn College. And then they were doing a project in Kavala on Odysseus, on the Odyssey, all throughout the different locations in Kavala. And that was so exciting, that idea was so exciting to me that when I heard that he was doing another festival, I asked him what the theme of the festival was, and it was Dionysios Solomos. And that is how I was introduced to the beautiful work of Solomos and to this poem, and the opportunity to look so deeply at a poem that is so special, a poet who is so special, the national poet of Greece, but also resonates so closely with us as Americans and what is happening in the US right now as well.
Others laughed to see the waters of thy woe swell round thee high. Back and find thy sons and daughters. Back again, the monsters cried. Over mountain, mead, and river, thy retreating footsteps fly, where the funeral shadows quiver of illustrious memories. Low was bowed thy head, and wearing furrows scorched with anxious strife, as the beggar who despairing groans beneath his load in life. Hark, thy sons march out for battle, with one spirit praying all, 'mong the deaths that round them rattle, to live victors or to fall. Sprung from heroes' bones that scattered, hallow every Grecian vale, with thy pristine soul unshattered, spirit of freedom, hail, all hail.
We were approached about doing this project in January, and the first time I read it, I didn't know what to think about it because I didn't know the history. I didn't know about the Battle of Tripolitsa. I didn't know about Messaloniki. I didn't know about Corinth. I always thought about Greece as the Greece of antiquity, the Greece of Zeus and Aphrodite and Athena. But learning about the more recent Greek history really kind of drew a parallel between what the U.S. is going through right now. In terms of especially the end of the poem, where after they've won all the battles, and then the Greek goddess of liberty comes out and says, okay, you've won this, but now the major conflict is disunion between all of the Greek people. Never by the tongues of slander let it, Palikars, be said, that your hands to hatred pander, raised against a brother's head. That line has always stuck with me, especially with what's going on in the U.S. right now, because we're so divided.
Thee with stars like music's fury greets Ionia's starry band, pledge of joy, heartfelt, cheery. Every islet lifts her hands, though she wears her fetters, forged with skill and closely now, and bears in branded letters false liberty upon her brow. With a soul-born love outspoken, greets the land of Washington, glad that she her bonds have broken, that her freedom she has won, while the western lion haughtily tosses his head and mane. From his tower a welcome crosses the blue sea twixt thee and Spain. Then the pard of Britain's island pauses, startled in his tracks. 'Gainst Russia's dim blue highlands growls the utterance of his wrath. Shows in every nervous motion how his limbs are clad with might, and o'er Aegea's mimic ocean glares his eye with meteor light. From his haunt in clouds untrodden, that eagle's eyes fixed on thee, with claws that are crimson, pinions sodden in the blood of Italy, swooping down with hate and wonder in circles each of narrower span, croaks and screams the bird of plunder to destroy thee if it can. Thou, all the while, unshrinking, strugglest on, forgetting fear, silent to those threats, nor thinking of the sounds which meet thine ear. As some rocky cliff where dashes every streamlet soiled with clay down its moveless foot and crashes into flakes of foamy spray.
When Laura and Jean first approached me to come on board to bring projection into this world, it was a very collaborative environment in which we talked about how to bring such an epic poem and make it accessible. And there were so many different locations and so many eras that we went through. Practically speaking, we knew that we were going to be performing here at the walls at Kavala. We had images, and we began to hope that we could projection map onto these walls, and that these walls, these ancient walls that have seen so much, that we could bring a bit of that life and that history.
Triple woe, whose labor thy divine impulse shall brave, who oppose thy lifted saber, who withstand thy falling glaive. From her ravaged den, outbursting toward her young, the wild beast ran. Thwart the hunter's circle, thirsting for the red lifeblood of man. On and on her man sally, through the woods a pathway traced, up the mountain, through the valley, lane, terror, death, and waste. Waste and death and terror lashing, thou didst bid thy progress be. From its sheath, the saber rattling, nobler courage gives to thee.
So my process started back early in New York when we shared ideas and we shared dramaturgical information back and forth about what each of the sections meant. And as the performers and director established a vocabulary, I learned directly from them not only what we needed to bring to the wall, but what I could bring to enhance the physicality and the movement. When we arrived here in Kavala, it was very practical. So we spent late into the evenings, all week, mapping every aspect of this and being able to use the cracks and the crevices and everything that's on here to our advantage. So some we came very prepared, and then once we were here, we really let the wall speak to us, and so that's how the design started and where it ended up in performance.
See! Well, working in the physical place, obviously being on the ramparts and being in Kavala, what struck me actually being in the place versus, we were working in a carriage house in New York, upstate New York. So when I'm on stage and he says, "Thus on Greece she begins," and I look out and I see Greece, and so I'm addressing Greece. Of course, as an actor, that impacts you in such a way that you're not having to imagine it anymore. I'm here living it. So that's how the space informed me.
The plain before thee whitening, Tripolitsa's leaguered wall. Now destruction's bolt of lightning thou art burning to let fall. Thine eye with generous exultation scorns the foeman near and far, through the battery's diapason, through the combat's mad hurrah. Stalking on, around thee prowling, as if to fright thee with their noise. Listen to the direful howling of 10,000 men and boys.
One of the early quotes in the poem of Dionysius Solomos speaks about the fact that liberty will only come when we call her. And that means that she lives in us. She lives in our minds, she lives in our hearts, always, but we don't always remember her. We don't always remember it. And we get so caught up in our daily lives, in our what is sort of important to us individually, that we kind of forget about the common good and how important it is for us to every single day fight for liberty, fight for equality, fight for what is right, what is going to be good for the largest number of people, for the common good, and not only for a few, which I think is why there is so many uprisings around the world and in the US and in Greece, because there has been too much power and too much money keeps moving upward, and the middle people, the normal person, is feeling the crunch from that.
They answer, and begins another battle din o'er the plain. Mount to mount, its distant brother, wildly echoing, rolls again. I hear the musket's rolling clatter. I hear the clash of sword and sheath, the axe and club, the thud and spatter. I hear the grinding gnash of teeth. Night of horrors, none can number. Woes which clog the struggling breath. Night of fear, which knew no slumber, but the nightmare sleep of death. The scene, the place, the hour, all saddened. Shouts and cheer and mob-like crowd. Wars resolve, soul stealing, battle surgy, smoky cloud. Streams of lightning, groans of thunder, bursting through the midnight fog.
See!
The gates of hell asunder, waiting for the Othman dogs.
So how can we come together and unite and fight for not only ourselves, but one another? And that's why I think it is so important not only to remember this poem now, and to remember liberty now, but to remember her always. And I think this piece will live in us for a very long time. The 6 months that we have been intensively working on this poem has changed us and really made us very aware of what is happening around us. And I hope that a little piece of that is available to the audiences when they come to see it as well.
Open wide, and then submerging, throngs of naked figures pressed. Shadowy sire and son and virgin, shadowy infant at the breast. Black, the funeral masses hover as the spirits upward sped. Black, the pall enfolding cover over the last, the narrow bed. And they all from every quarter, all came rising from the tomb, who in Muslim rage of slaughter met the hero martyr's doom. as the fallen sheaves when reapers cut the harvest field of grain. These awakened, ghostly sleepers seem to cover all that plain.
When we approached it, we looked at it, and it's 158 stanzas. And if you break it down by lines, that's about 630 lines. I think Richard III is about 300, so it's a lot of lines. And we were looking at it, we were gonna tackle it as a one-man show, but the more that we read it, we really realized that liberty is a character in it. It's the personification of liberty. And we felt that we needed an actress or actor who could really bring that to life. And I went to undergrad with an amazing actress named Roseanne McNamara, and we had wanted to work together for almost 20 years. And so we approached her to see if she would want to be involved in it.
Well, because it's a poem and because it's not a conversational piece that's typical of character work, we had to create our own character work. So as Jean and I were depicting these scenes and these battles, we ended up conversing with each other through our movement, and it wasn't scene work like normal beat to beat with words, but it was movement work. And so we related to each other and created scene work out of a poem. And it was done with so much brilliance and driven by Laura and Jean, and it helped me so much that I looked at this poem when I first read it and I was like, there's no way we can do this. I don't know how it's gonna happen. And through this process that Laura created, we were able to make it into a story that we could tell, that we could work off of each other and our movement. It was an amazing process.
Originally, we thought we would just have one actor. We thought we would just have Jean. But then we realized that there were fights and there was potential in this for a dialogue, even though the characters never actually really speak too much to each other in the way we've done this. There's a conversation happening between Liberty and our narrator that we wanted to physicalize, and we wanted to find a way to tell that story because it's there, it's written in the poetry.
We got to kind of do all of the acting that I've always wanted to do. In grad school, my favorite class was mass class, mass, commedia, and clown. That was our Mondays. It was 8 hours of movement-based teaching. And we really got to kind of try to tackle that with this play and with the interaction of Liberty and the narrator character. I don't think that we could have done the play without her.
Not a starry beam descended as the spirits upward sped, and they toward their castle wended with the stillness of the dead. So beneath the moon's pale crescent, in the forest leafy night, and the vale lies phosphorescent in a stream of vaporous light, in the low-toned zephyr rustle through the tendril-bordered way, while above the branches jostle sweeping shadows fitful sway. Eagerly they scan the places where the blood pools stiffen lie, and through blood in weird embraces dance with hoarse sepulchre cry. And each dance impassioned presses closely to the Grecian band. Each a warrior's breast caresses with its death-chilled icy hand. Through the vital members thrilling comes the touch of that caress, destroys all grief, instilling rage and hatred merciless. Then the battle choir engages in a yet more awful glee, as the tempest fury rages o'er unbroken wastes of sea. Blows a hailing hither, thither, and each blow a death scent call. All are striking reckless wither, but no second stroke need fall. Every limb is reeking, flowing. 'Tis as if the soul would fly, and from hatred's fiery glowing strives its winged strength to fly. But the heartbeat pulses coldly in the bosom's sluggish calm, while more fiercely still and boldly falls its saber-swinging arm. Not a thought the spirit enters, nor of earth, nor sea, nor air. All for all, and each one centers in the crowded combat there.
One of my favorite classes in college was a class called Performance of Literature, and you took short stories, novels, poems, that kind of thing, and turned them into a piece of theater. That was in my undergrad, so that was almost 20 years ago. And my grad program was in classical acting, so I love Shakespeare and I love all of the kind of ancient texts. So getting to take all of that learning and experience and really put it into a play has been amazing.
I have, for the last 20 years, been creating pieces of work that are exploring embodied work, embodied performance, so very physical performances. And that requires a lot of work from the actors and a lot of precision. And I find that the plays or the poems that are most beautifully brought to life by this kind of work have language that is robust and that has imagery that can be put into life.
The relationship with Laura TESMAN, the director, was such a collaborative, improvisational process. And it was a lot of work and hours just moving our bodies and taking words from the piece and how those words make you feel and internalizing them into your body. And so through this very unique movement, improvisational work that she had us go through, these exercises that were so brilliantly constructed by her to get the movement out of us, that's how we came to the pieces, and then she put them all together into this lovely, telling the tale through the movement of the piece.
I just love working with classical texts, and the ＳOLΩMOU's poem, Hymn to Liberty, just reminds me so much of Shakespeare. There's a great story, a friend of mine says that Shakespeare's like one of those origami folders, and the more, those origami flowers, and the more you unfold it, the more you see. And that's kind of what this poem is like. The more you unfold it and the more you dig into the language, the more beautiful it becomes. So,
this poem, Hymn to Liberty, is not a play, it's a poem, but the story being told is so visceral. It is so, the poetry is so complex and deep. Like Jean said, it unfolds like an origami flower, that it is the perfect vehicle for performance that is very physical. See them!
Hopeless, hero-hearted, harvest in death's crimson crop. How remember parted, heads, hands, feet before them drop. Cartridge boxes, steel in shivers, brain clots reeking from the knife, and the battered trunk that quivers with the thrill of parting life. Not a fleeting thought is given to the slaughtered in the fray. On, still on. Have ye not striven long enough? Cease to slay. But the dogs now few and daunted, Allah shout with Allah die. Fire, fire rises chanted as the Christians' battle cry. Fire, and the wild lion like they fought and bled, till the infidels were routed, howling Allah as they fled. Everywhere, an anguished moaning, curses mixed with fear and prayer. There was wailing, there was groaning, and death's ruckle everywhere.
The scenography of this wall is beautiful. It can live on its own. It becomes another character. As we began to build this piece, it was, we had earlier discussions that said, well, what would happen even if we didn't have projections? And we wanted to make sure that the projections really were enhancing the story, not not showing off, so to speak. They were not just what we could do with interesting images. So everything that you saw in performance really was rooted in dramaturgy, and it wanted to only support, not take its own characteristic. And so you'll see something as dominant as a wall in a physical space. The reason that projections became a really strong tool for us was that we could take that wall and transport it over 200 years of history. This wall, we could see the wall in various states. We could see both a dream state and a literal state. Some moments you're in a forest, and other moments you're in a dream. And that was all through what was originated in the dramaturgy.
And the blood each hillock drenches, stream-like rolls each valley through. All the guiltless herbage quenches its thirst with blood, not dew. Breeze of morning, dewy, balmy, on the crescent breathe no more. Leave the heathen star and calmly on the cross thy blessings pour. Sprung from heroes' bones that scattered, hallow every Grecian vale with thy pristine soul unshattered. Spirit of freedom, hail, all hail.
I always would try to approach the work as an enhancement. If for some reason the projector went out, the drama is strong enough to carry it. What I bring to the story is again another layer, and hopefully one that integrates very delicately with performances of our live actors.
Freedom, thou divine and deathless, thou hast all power to work thy will. On the plain I watch thee breathless, walking, stained with blood and still. And where yonder shadow lingers, I see and embrace coy maidens with their lily fingers interlaced with coral joy, dancing while love's passion gushes from their eyelids' parted folds, and the toying zephyr flushes with their ringlet waves of gold. And my soul with joy is swelling to think each virgin breast shall be to its babes' soft lips a quelling fount of manhood, bold and free.
Well, of course, we keep mentioning Shakespeare, who is not American, as a person who we feel that Dionysius is very close to in terms of the depth of the poetry. But we think of Shelley or Tennyson or many of our poets who really, Whitman, Walt Whitman is a wonderful poet who tells these emotional stories with his poetry.
Thy foot beneath wax clouds lowering, Messalongi's rampart trod. On Christmas morn, when forests flowering hailed the newborn child of God, then religion, with her cross and her torch, led on the way, pointing upward toward the porches of eternal heavenly day. Here beside this battle-dinted mound, she cried, stand, freedom, fast. On thy lips a kiss imprinted, and within the church door passed.
And Lord Byron wrote here in the country in English as well, so beautifully about the revolution. So I think that there is there is a reference for us in terms of the poetry that really has is thick with metaphors and images, and really is trying to tell a story in a complex and emotional way, that it hits your heart, it hits your gut when you hear these words, and you chew the words in a way. They as you discover the way that the sounds, and we wish we could understand it in Greek, because I'm sure that I imagine the same is true of the Greek, that the sounds become the things that you're talking about.
Fiery gleams, a flashing cluster, hang from lip, eye, and forehead bright. Thy hand and foot are clothed in luster, and around thee all is light. Poised on high thy sabre standeth, while thy foot thrice forward tends. Thy form like a tower expandeth. Another step, the blow descends. Then thou, defiant in behavior, and thy voice instinct with scorn, criest,
Infidels, our Savior and the world's this day is born.
Avtos lehi, apokrostiti, eho im alpha omega eho, peste pu thapokrostiti.
Well, that would be patriotism. So what I felt that connected me to this hymn was, you can see the Greeks' connection to their culture and their country and the patriotism. And for me, as an American, I am patriotic. And when I see my flag, I am filled with love for my country and joy for our freedom and what our ancestors fought so hard to secure our freedoms. And the Hymn to Liberty, we are portraying the same thing, but for your country, your Revolutionary War, and all the sacrifices made by your ancestors to secure your freedoms. So when I first saw your cross or your flag here in Greece, I was filled with emotion and joy, because now I understand what the flag means to your people the way the flag means to me.
Thy strong hand the earth feels and blesses, a deliverance in her need, and a vengeful death that presses on the Christ despising seeks. And the water feels it pouring, foam flecked on, and through the air peals the deep voice of its roaring, like a wild beast in its lair. Fate accursed, fly and welter in the Achelous's bed, struggle valiantly for shelter through the onslaught fierce and red. Hasten, for the wave all blinding swells as with the tempest sound. There ye a burial finding, before ye a grave have found.
I think when we think about the intersectionality of theater and projections, and we've seen this grow over the number of years in live performance, but in this last year we certainly have seen artists, theater artists and film artists coming together to collaborate in online experiences, online dramas, some with great success and some with not so great success, to be honest. But it was all through the impulse of trying to make theater when we had lost the ability to gather. I think something that will be fascinating out of this will be what we take from this last year's experience in making theater in digital formats. There's a new vocabulary. For those of us who've been working in projections and theater, it's a vocabulary that's a wonderful world to share. And I think there's new artists now who are experiencing what projection, what video and film, how that can also play into a live experience. And now that we're getting closer and closer to returning to out of lockdown, there's now a new vocabulary and hopefully new tools to explore.
While the heads are surged and drifted, with despair all blank, their eyes open staringly uplifted, for the last time towards the sky. All is hushed. Its whelming torrent, the Aschluss pours again. The nays, the noise of weapons horrent, hushed the groans of dying men. Oh, to hear deep ocean follow the roaring of its flood. See the stifling breaker swallow all that sprang from offering blood. Naked corpses without pity, beaten on the sea and sand, piled along the seven-walled city where the holy wisdom stands. Onward, by God's curses driven, and to see, O highest boon, see the mangled corpses given to the brother of the moon.
Well, before coming here, I had no notion of Greece. I had never visited. I didn't know much about the nationality, nothing. I would see the pictures of the islands, you know, and the white buildings and the crystal blue water, and that's all I knew in my head, or the Greek food we get in the USA. And now I have this a deeper love and the culture and the people and the warmth of the country, and also just the patriotism and the love that the Greeks have for their country that I did not really think about before.
Helicars, a note of gladness rings the war trump to your ears. Among you in the battle's madness, no knee trembles, no heart fears. Every foe before you quailing turns and flies. But even now, one remains unconquered, paling the bay chaplet around each brow. One, though like mad wolves, the dreary crimson field of strife ye fill, till with triumph ye grow weary. One remains your tyrant still. Disunion and her wily offers of a scepter's regal shine, that to each she smiling proffers. Take it, it is thine.
I think working on this piece, it originated with the Greek hymn to liberty. And that was a starting point as Americans to dive into not only the concepts of the origins of liberty, but the history of the Greek struggle. As we went deeper into this piece, anytime you expand or study liberty or the concepts around that, you can't help but compare them to your own condition. Being able to see at this point in US history where we are in comparison to other countries and other struggles. Liberty is not a uniquely Greek thing. It's not a uniquely American thing. I think it's a struggle that that in this global world we begin to see what these concepts do.
If this counsel ye have taken, see before you stands the cross. Strike!
Ye monarchs,
Waken! Strike! And rescue us from loss.
But being able to bring this here and to concentrate, anytime you have a meditation on anything like we have here, being able to bring an audience together, to look at this through that lens, that forever changes you. So I can only speak for myself individually, starting on a piece that is so internal, and then being able to travel here to Greece and to continue that conversation not only theatrically, but with everybody we've met. I look forward to seeing how that changes me when I return. I know it has. I just don't know in what ways that will manifest.
We feel so connected to Greece. The founding of democracy, the founding of our Western thought, of Western philosophies, come to the United States from Greece. And we learned as a part of this poem, as we were studying this poem and speaking to Greeks about this poem, we learned that the Greeks were inspired by the American Revolution, and the American flag and our beautiful Statue of Liberty are the representation of our fight for independence, which connects so closely to your fight for independence. And so I think that we are linked, the Greeks and the Americans, Greece and America, through our fight for those things that were established in the founding of democracy here in this beautiful country.
Αρχίζει. Σε γνωρίζω, αρχίνας. Σε γνωρίζω από την όψη του σπαθιού την τρομερή. Σε γνωρίζω από την κόψη του μεριά μετράει τη γη. Απ' τα κόκαλα βγαλμένη των Ελλήνων τα ιερά και σαν πρώτα αντριωμένη χαίρο χαίρε ελευθεριά και σαν πρώτα αντριωμένη χαίρο χαίρε ελευθεριά.
Μπράβο. Τώρα θα πούμε
εκεί μέσα κατοικούσες πικραμένο ντροπαλί και ένα στόμα καρτερούσε, έλα πάλι να σου πει.
Μπράβο.
Να έρθει εκείνη η μέρα της ανώρας σιωπηλά, γιατί τα σκάζει φοβέρα και τα πλάκωνε σκλαβιά.